Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the conservation podcast. The show dedicated to telling the conservation stories which I feel are underappreciated, underexplored, underacknowledged, but are still fascinating and wonderful and interesting and really should grab your attention. The stories that really inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and on this week's show, we are sticking our neck out for giraffes. It is, of course, World Giraffe Day, the day this is being launched, and I am joined by Julian and Stephanie Fennessy, the people who run and founded the Giraffe Conservation Foundation, one of the certainly for me, the charity which is synonymous with giraffes and protecting them all across their range, all across Africa. So, yeah, you might think, a bit like last week where we talked about dolphins, one of the most popular animals in the world, you might think, oh, well, why are you talking about giraffes? They're really, really popular. They must be really, really common. Everyone must love them and be trying to protect them and do everything they can for them. But that isn't actually always the case. Giraffes are undergoing what's known as a silent extinction. And while Julian and Steph will go into that in much more detail throughout the episode, basically what that means is their numbers are decreasing and kind of they are slipping away. But because they are so popular and there are these assumptions made, they're starting to disappear without even a trace. So it's really important that we shine the spotlight on these amazing creatures now and try and kind of bring them back from this dangerous position that they're in. Just to provide some perspective, and you'll hear this in the interview as well, something that really stuck out to me is the comparison that I think it's Steph makes between giraffes and elephants. While there are just over 100,000 giraffe left in the wild, and we consider them to be really popular, really kind of like common, we don't focus our conservation efforts or energy necessarily on them a lot of the time. When you compare them with something like elephants, there's actually about 3-4 times as many elephants as there are giraffes. So really quite concerning and something we really should be talking about more, which is of course why we have this episode today. Now, I'm going to leave you here because, of course, the people who run the charity are far better equipped to talk about giraffes than I am. So I really hope you enjoy today's interview. Before I go, of course, you can follow us on all of our social media platforms at Pangolin Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. And yes, make sure to follow us on your podcast streaming service of choice so you don't miss out on any future content that we have. So, I will leave you here. I really, really hope you enjoy, and I will, talk to you again at the end of this episode. But for now, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the show. I am now joined by Julian and Stephanie Fennessy, who are the directors of the Giraffe Conservation Foundation. They're here to talk about their organisation as well as the amazing species that it protects. So thank you very much for joining me today, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. It's great to be online with you.
Thank you. And I wondered if we can go kind of one at a time, if you could kind of introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us a little bit about your background. So I don't know, Julian, do you want to start? And then
No worries. Thanks, Jack. My name's Dr. Julian Fennessy. I'm a director at the Giraffe Conservation Foundation. I've been lucky enough to work with giraffe for the last 20 odd years on and off, and been involved in a lot of habitat and land management, both in Australia, hence my accent, as well as across Africa.
Mm-hmm. And Steph?
Yeah, so I'm Steph Fennessy. I'm Julian's wife and co-director of the Giraffe Conservation Foundation. I kind of married into giraffe conservation. I'm an environmental engineer by trade, but we both met here in Namibia working on a catchment study of a river in the far northwest of the country, where Julian started his research on giraffe, and it was part of our work. And yeah, I got involved from the first day basically and helped setting up the research for his PhD, and did some other work at the same time. So I'm a project manager and have worked in a wide variety of conservation and environmental projects. But for the last 5-6 years have been doing giraffe full time.
Interesting. That's really interesting. It's good to hear your background because I watched the documentary you sent me, and I'll put a link to it for the listeners as well to watch. Um, the Faces of Africa, the giraffe, a silent extinction kind of documentary, and we got a little bit of Julian's background in that, but I didn't know a lot about what you had done previously. So it's interesting to kind of hear that as well. And while I'm mentioning the documentary, that's kind of a lot of the things that I'm going to ask you about are in there as well, and we're going to expand a lot on that. But I wanted to ask kind of a lot of people, I think, would assume when watching it, what jumped out of me, I think, is a lot of people assume that giraffes, they're very popular, so they must be very well protected. And when you kind of learn more and more and more, there seems to be a lot of things going on that make it very difficult to kind of, yeah, that's not actually the case. And I was wondering, just before we kind of get into everything, if you could kind of help the listeners understand maybe what is the kind of general picture of giraffe conservation like now? They're not perhaps as safe as people might imagine? I don't know who wants. Julian, do you want to take that one? Oh,
I'll start. He fills in the blanks. Yeah, I mean, giraffe are obviously in countries like South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, where a lot of people come on safari. They're pretty much everywhere. You see them a lot. They're quite easy to spot. They're charismatic. People love seeing them. So people just assume they're everywhere. And when we started getting involved in giraffe conservation, we just started compiling information and trying to find out how many giraffe there were. And we realized that the numbers were actually far lower than anyone thought. We just released a new estimate. We now think there is about 117,000 giraffe remaining in Africa. There's at least 450,000 elephant. And elephant are in trouble. We all know that, and we have to protect them. But that means there is 3 to 4 elephant for every 1 giraffe. So giraffe also need help, and they are far less than we thought there are. And what makes matters worse is that our research has clearly shown that there is 4 distinct species of giraffe. They're very different and should be classified as different species, and some of them are doing quite well, like here in southern Africa, but the other 3 species are in serious trouble, and some of them should be considered critically endangered.
that's really really interesting. It's not perhaps I think I hadn't heard the fact about well, I never made the connection, I guess, between elephants and giraffe and how if you look at I think because the poster child for a lot of the big kind of WWF and everything will always be they'll always use a picture of an elephant, and so you'd expect the situation perhaps to be much worse for them. And obviously, comparing apples and oranges, that would be very, very different. But it's interesting to hear that kind of comparison. Didn't know, is there anything, Julian, you wanted to add? Or I think that's, yeah.
It's quite fascinating. You make that analogy with elephant and the very large, what we call bingos, big international NGOs, who use elephant, rhino as the poster child. And, there's no doubt, they're very charismatic, but, giraffe are the tallest animal in the world. However, they have been this silent extinction. Many of these NGOs have never looked at them because the assumption is that they are everywhere. And if you split those 4 species, as Steph said, we've got the northern giraffe. There's an estimated maybe 6,500 northern giraffe left in the wild. So that's more endangered as a terminology. I mean, it's critically endangered than, mountain gorillas, black rhino, all of these animals out there that the world knows so much about. Unfortunately, giraffe have gone under the radar, plummeted because of various reasons from habitat loss, degradation, human population growth, connected to poaching or civil war and unrest. It just seems that giraffe slowly is getting a little bit more attention, and we hope that the work we and others do can help get more attention. And by naming them as 4 species, hopefully in the future, they'll get much more attention, funding, and support to be able to save them before it's too late.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, and I think it's one of those things that I think a lot of species it gets to this point, and that's when people start panicking and going, "Oh no, that now they get it." So while you don't want to let them get that close to the edge, it is good that I guess now people are starting to turn and realize just how okay now we really need to start supporting these animals as well. And you kind of mentioned there some of the threats that they are facing out in the wild, and I did have it's a good segue. You did my work for me there because I was going to ask you about some of those threats, and Yes, because I kind of picked up on looking at your website and through all the materials and things like habitat loss and human expansion, poaching, and then also the kind of dealing with environments where there are political issues as well and civil kind of issues going on as kind of in that area. So if we start with the kind of habitat loss, human expansion element, I wanted to ask in the documentary you mentioned that there was no direct resource competition except for really space, and it focused a lot on translocating the giraffes and kind of moving them to other places. I wondered if you could tell the listeners a little bit about that. What is kind of translocation of these animals, and how does that work?
Yeah, because of habitat loss and people encroaching or civil unrest in areas, giraffe have gone extinct in certain areas. But things have changed, political systems have changed, and some of these areas are now protected again. So it would be safe for animals to return. But because large scale movements are restricted in many African countries, and many countries, giraffe and other wildlife only occur in national parks, and they obviously can't freely move in between them. So they can't really expand their range by themselves. So this is where we and the governments come in and help them to expand their range. If another national park that might be disconnected but is politically safe again, and the habitat is suitable for giraffe, we can help to bring giraffe back into that area by physically moving them, which sounds very easy. But as you can imagine, because of their physiology, a giraffe can't be picked up so easily and just transported. So it's quite an involved process. It makes for good pictures, so obviously it's very popular for documentaries and photos. But it's a massive operation that requires long planning. It's dangerous for people and for animals. And costs a lot of money, but it's a very valuable tool, really, to increase the range of giraffe and bring them back into areas where they have gone locally extinct.
And I think just to add to that, Jack, I mean, as conservation in Africa, if not the world, the biggest thing moving forward is habitat. If we can save as much habitat as possible, the suite of animals that live in and amongst it will have a better hope. So whether that's a lion, an elephant, giraffe, whatever. And critically for what we do is that, translocations is one of the tools that we're helping governments and other NGOs or communities to be able to bring back giraffe into areas. At the moment, I think we work in more than 100 million acres of land across Africa. That's good giraffe habitats, trying to help bring them back to some areas. But the bottom line is translocation. Yeah, it's quite sexy looking for a lot of people. And it's a great way to do it, but it's something that you can't do every day because the amount of money involved in conservation is not endless, unfortunately, at the moment. But definitely very successful in the ones that we've done so far in Uganda, Malawi, Niger, Namibia, and so on. So it's all working well.
And maybe just to add to that still is that giraffe are just a really good flagship species then as well. Once they're quite charismatic, everyone loves giraffe. They're not really controversial normally. But so most local people don't mind having giraffe in their area. So once the giraffe are there and they're protected, that really helps to protect the land, which then can be repopulated with other animals as well. So it's a bit of a knock-on effect.
That's really, yeah, and because earlier this year I was speaking to people who were kind of reintroducing species in the UK, things like bison, to kind of test this theory, and it's amazing the way that the kind of just one species, if it's big enough and has certain elements, if it's charismatic enough in a way to attract like protections, or if it's ecologically valuable in a way to that it has these kind of other effects that it one thing can have so many knock-on effects, make such a huge difference beyond simply just adding an iconic animal back into a landscape. It's a lot more than that. It's really, really interesting. And I wondered, you were kind of you touched on how it was a bit sometimes difficult to kind of do these translocations and find the kind of funding or the kind of moving the animals around. What is the alternative there when there is the kind of spaces that need filled? Is there any other kind of methods that you use, or how do you deal with it when that's not a possibility?
So where giraffe currently exist, it's most important to be able to conserve and save the populations there. That's, 101. So we work with governments to, whether it's anti-poaching or de-snaring work, if there's issues like in Murchison Falls National Park, we have a full-time veterinarian team working with the government there on the ground. So that's critical to better monitor them through surveys, and then we can see if there's fluctuations or changes in population. So that's one of the first things we do. And then obviously assessing if those threats in any area have changed, and if they're becoming too threatened, and as we say, if we've got all our eggs in one basket, then we need to find alternative areas to be able to bring these giraffe to. Some of these giraffe populations, as we said, are very threatened. You know, there's just over 600 left in Niger, and they were up from 49 individuals in the wild. So this is a very low population. We've done a lot of work behind the scenes around it, and found a place that government and community are happy to bring giraffe. But it's not something that you just do overnight. This took many years of planning, discussions, developing a national strategy, implementing it where the giraffe currently exists, and then ongoing monitoring that's happening in the field now.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I guess the difficult thing about giraffe is it is a big animal, so it can give you one heck of a kick, or it can give you there's a whole number of things that you're gonna have to take into account when moving these things that make it probably a very difficult and expensive process to do. So yes, I can imagine not the easiest thing in the world. I wanted
So,
to.
I mean, we can add to that, Jack, you know, that we've all had a little bit of niggles and problems, you know, whether it's been a broken arm here or broken ribs or things like that. You know, they all add up. And, you know, the most important thing is we want to keep both the animal and people safe.
Mhm.
But, you know, they say you should never work with animals and children. And, you know, our kids love to come with us. So, you know, we've ticked both of those boxes.
Yes, having worked in I always wonder that. I don't have kids, but went and worked in a zoo and all these things and chose to work in a place where there are animals and they are children, and it's kind of they're not my I have to keep them safe because I am responsible in a way, but I can't imagine if they were mine, the stress level would be about 10 times more. So that's bold bold choice. Uh, do you think, side note, do you think they, having done it and come with you and do it, is that like what they want to do? Are they going to be the next generation of giraffe conservationists, do you think?
We rather want them to have a real job and earn some money, so we encourage them to do something else. No, they're actually both very different, and our daughter is really, she loves animals, and I think she's quite keen. But recently we went to a bank, into like the higher levels into a bank, and she came home that night and said now she wants to work in the bank now. She was very impressed with the office space. And I think our son at the moment would love to become a professional gamer, but yeah, let's see. They're 12 and 15, so there's still a bit of time and hope.
That's my sister. She's vegan, she's very ethically aware, she does all these things, but at the end of the day she's studying business at university because I think she's the same. She likes and she will do her bit, but also the money side is probably quite important as well. So I see that. I do see the appeal. I'll probably be the one who ends up kind of mooching off of her. That's the thing.
Exactly. So at least we have one of them is the sensible one. But I mean, it's amazing. They have been to some amazing places and working with some amazing people, working with a whole group of rangers from Uganda and being involved. That is just an amazing experience for them. And we really hope that they can value it at some stage. Sometimes now they just say, oh, can't we do like something proper and do a proper holiday? But yeah, I guess you always wish for what you don't have.
I was going to say a proper holiday. I would kill for a holiday like that. I can't.
Another translocation, Mom.
Oh, but yes, that's yes. Well, maybe you'll convince them in the. Well, actually, no. You want them to do them. They can then fund you doing more of the like translocations. That's the way to do it.
Well,
But yeah,
if there's any very rich, wealthy, you know, young ladies or boys out there that are looking for partners.
So your sister, how old is she?
But back on track before we get too sidetracked. Back up, giraffe. Back on track. So yes, that's the kind of translocation aspect, is kind of moving them from one place to another. And then another thing that I kind of wanted to ask about, especially because season one I talked a lot about pangolin, and obviously they're most trafficked mammal in the world, huge international trade in pangolin, and that's not an issue really for giraffe, but there is still poaching that goes on for kind of bushmeat and things like that. And I wanted to ask, how do you start to? It was kind of mentioned. I've seen kind of mentioned on the website in the documentary, kind of the bushmeat trade and this kind of issue. Um, but I wanted to kind of ask, how do you tackle that when you're working across such a large space and it will be used in so many different ways in so many different places? How do you even begin to tackle an issue like that, such as like bushmeat?
I mean, luckily, it's not a huge issue, and unlike the pangolin, there's just no commercial trade and big scale trade. You can imagine a giraffe is quite easy to hunt, and there's a lot of meat on it. So there is reports from areas where there is big, almost military operations out there trying poaching elephant for their tusks. They will shoot a giraffe because they prefer the taste of giraffe meat, because it's easy and it feeds an army or a village. But because it is mainly locally, it doesn't appear to be a huge threat in most places.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that giraffe were added to CITES Appendix 2 in 2019, and mostly because the precautionary principle that numbers are going down and, a threat of hunting. However, the word hunting was loosely used to include both trophy hunting, which happens only in Southern Africa, and legally. That's a big moral, ethical issue I don't think we want to get into. That's another world. And versus bushmeat or illegal trade, where that is happening in country where the numbers are plummeting. And while CITES is a great tool and will hopefully help us get a better handle on, the legal trade of giraffe hide internationally, it actually does nothing to understand what's happening with the bushmeat market and local trafficking that's happening in countries. So unfortunately, while it seems to be a win for many people, we just published a paper recently, actually, with colleagues from Oxford and San Diego Zoo Global, which showed that, unfortunately, that the legal trade is not having really an impact on the demise of giraffe, but this bushmeat trade is. So, as a result of that, we actually work closely with organisations like the Kenya Wildlife Service. We've been doing bushmeat assessments of butcheries throughout the whole of Kenya, sorry, to figure out, what flavour meats are in these markets. So there's genetic sampling happening, and hopefully, in the not too distant future, we can figure out where these hotspots are, and then work with the government and other partners to basically implement activities on the ground. So that's how we try to look at a big scale and then go down on the local level to assist.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting, actually, because it's one of those things that when you think it is a continent-wide, a lot of people I've spoken to last week, I spoke to somebody about dolphins within the kind of Mediterranean, and he was looking at a very specific group within a very specific thing. But when your foundation is tackling the whole continent across many countries, many governments, many people involved, that it must become kind of head scratching at points to try and work these things out. So interesting to hear how it goes from this kind of larger scale all the way down to individual. Hopefully I will, if anything comes up, and when things do come up, I'll make sure and post links and things to it for listeners who are interested, to keep them informed on what the kind of studies and things find, because that is really interesting. But yes, I think the next thing to kind of ask about then, I guess similarly, there is the across talking of the kind of issues that go across the continent, there is the kind of political issues which we've kind of touched on previously, and the political kind of unrest, or if there's civil issues or things that are going on. How do you work in areas like that when it's obviously not dangerous just for the animals, but for you? How do you kind of deal with that kind of logistical nightmare, I would imagine?
Yeah, luckily during COVID times we couldn't travel, so no, it's sometimes you really have to weigh up if it's worthwhile, and obviously human lives in the end count more than animal lives. We have some staff in Niger, but there has been some very political situation there has changed a lot. Their movements are limited. Some tourists have been killed there a few years ago, and also some local rangers who we used to work with. Then you really reassess your program in those countries, and we had to reduce our planned activities in Niger significantly, because in the end you just really have to weigh up. But we work a lot with local partners. So we just don't go blind into an area and try to do something. We always work with the government and local NGOs who know the situation very well, and often have staff on the ground who know how to navigate different systems, and that really helps us. But
you normally like to say, which I'm surprised you haven't said, is that if you ask a listener or anyone in an audience, have you ever worked with the government? Whether it's local or a national government in your country, whether it's in the UK somewhere or Australia or Germany, and we know that bureaucracy exists. Now try and work in 16 African countries, and they're all very different. They've all got very different backgrounds. Funnily enough, to the world, Africa is not a country; it's actually a continent. So all of these things, make it a real challenge, and that's why we have staff based in many countries across the continent, and we've forged really strong relationships with governments, because if we're going to save giraffe in the wild, it has to be at the want and the desire and the belief of the government, and so they're the ones who make the difference. We could save a little population somewhere, I'm sure, if we own private land, and that's great, and we're happy people do that. But if we want to make a big difference for giraffe across the continent, working with government's critical. And I don't have too much hair left, and I think a lot of that has been stress over the years of working with governments. But the success that you get out of it is worth a hell of a lot more in the end when things go well.
Mm-hmm. I think everybody can relate to, even if it's just trying to get your bins emptied or try to fill a form. The complications that come along with that. Never mind an entire. It's not like I have to, sitting in Scotland, I don't have to phone across to Sweden or somewhere across in Europe, because that's the scale which, like, it's the same size. So I guess people don't quite quantify the size and the fact that yes, Africa is a continent. That I still don't understand that, because if you look at a map, that's another issue. Like the things we've touched, another issue. That's a whole podcast on itself. Just to kind of come on, guys. But yes.
What is probably important to just add to that is that there is just no blueprint for giraffe conservation. The problems of giraffe are so different in different countries, different populations, the threats they are facing. There are some that are similar, but overall the threats are really different. And so it's very important to understand what is going on in each country and each population. And another thing we always say, and what Julian just also touched on, in the end, giraffe have to be saved in Africa by African people. We can come and we can work with them, and we can encourage and we can advise, we can raise funding and we can help. But in the end, the drive has to come from the local people and from the governments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess what made you want to start? This got me thinking. Kind of, did you start kind of in one place and then realize actually this is a much wider issue that we want to try and make this across, or how did you get to this scale of trying to work with things?
I mean, GCF started with, initially it was Julian's PhD, and then he realized there was really no one else doing anything, so did a couple of consultancies, and then we just slowly over the years started understanding the scale of the problem. And then we started really small in our spare time for many years. For many years we both had full-time other jobs, and did it in the evenings on the couch, just sitting there and trying to organize some trips and DNA sampling and collecting numbers. And it was only in 2014-15 that we started working part-time on giraffe, and now full-time, and now we are 17, 18 staff, so
20 staff,
20 maybe. So we are slowly growing, and that wasn't really the plan in the beginning. So it really has evolved. And just now, over the last few weeks, we have been in discussions with the Mozambique government, who are really keen to bring giraffe back into certain parks. And suddenly we have a massive program in Mozambique, which we hadn't really even thought about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. But I think we started GCF proper as a formal organisation. We had realised by then that we had to do continent-wide, and obviously work with partners at the local scale. But if we really wanted to save giraffe, it was definitely the broader issues had to be tackled and worked with. Um, and that's the real challenge. And I think, some days we hope we're making some headway, but other days it feels like it would have been easier just to sort of live in a nice little private reserve and study giraffe and look at some empirical data and save the world that way. But as we know, that's not really going to do much at the end of the day.
Yes, but I guess it's interesting to hear because I think even before speaking to you and before doing the research, for me, when I was looking at things, it was kind of your organization would always be the top when you look for giraffe. It would always be the top thing that came up, or the top. So it's interesting to hear that you didn't necessarily intend at inception for it to be that way, but you've gone on to become probably synonymous, for better or worse, for you sometimes, synonymous with giraffe conservation. But yes, because it was even the day we organised this, it was kind of we were going backwards and forwards, and I think I saw Edinburgh Zoo pop up. They just got giraffes back, and then it was in association, and just quotes from you, and that's oh, okay. They're everywhere. It's not just I haven't. I thought I've tapped onto something here in Scotland. I'll be the first. Oh no, you're here already, but it's good.
I mean, with RZSS, the relationship is fantastic, and we're doing a couple of different projects with them at Edinburgh Zoo. But I think equally as good, actually even better for me, is the partnership with Glenmorangie. I do like a wee dram, and so a couple of years ago, I was lucky to come up and give a talk at the zoo, but meet the guys from Glenmorangie, spend some time up at Tain as well, and yeah, unfortunately, COVID has restricted me going back up. But as soon as those flights go up, I'm sure there needs to be a meeting had in Scotland to plan for the next program.
I was meant to go down to Namibia. You were meant to come up here. So as soon as those flights are booked, we'll probably be passing each other on a plane, going in opposite directions. But yes, I guess something I wanted to ask about. We kind of have touched on the kind of interactions with, I guess, governments and different partners across the world. And I was going to ask about working with interactions. I wanted to ask a bit more about these interactions with other people, and whether you think that kind of the giraffe being so famous and being so loved has affected. Do you think when you are interacting with governments, do they assume, oh well, the giraffe is so popular, it must be, or are you bringing them new information a lot of the time, or do they think, what's the situation there when you first go to them?
It's interesting. You would assume that lots is known about giraffes, so one has to be cautious when you go into any of these meetings and discussions that you're not talking at people, but you're discussing with them. So, but unfortunately, there is very little known by many of the African governments about their giraffe population. I think Uganda and our partnership with Uganda Wildlife Authority is a great example. When we first started there in 2013, we had estimated, or they had estimated, essentially, I don't know, it was like 700 giraffe, yeah. And so we then set up a very strategic survey protocol working with partners from Dartmouth College in the USA. And in the space of a couple of years, we had doubled the population, not by anything other than actually physically counting them. Every individual giraffe had been photographed through the surveys, run it through AI software. So we had very strong counts. And that led to a whole host of programs, including the source population of Murchison Falls, which has now, over the last 5 years, helped set up or augment another 5 populations of Nubian giraffe, which are critically endangered in Uganda. And that's more than 3 million acres of land we've been able to help the government bring giraffe back to. So yeah, when you go and talk to them, you obviously, you want a long-term partnership and friendship and relationship. So yeah, no, all this information is very much new, especially for rangers. And anytime we have the opportunity to share data, whether it's online free or traveling through zoos or going to governments, we always bring, whether it's posters, booklets, etc., and many reports to keep them updated on what's going on. So it's a constant process, and we're learning every day, and hopefully the more and more we can share, the more information awareness, the more that can be done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's really, yeah, it's interesting to hear that they kind of had such a not a bad picture, but like an inaccurate picture of what the situation was. But I guess if there's no one there doing it, then how would they even begin to imagine? Because unless you are seeing them on a daily basis, it's not something that you would be aware of. And I think actually that's something that stood out in the documentary to me. I think a lot of people would assume in Africa, where these animals are from, people would be really aware of the situation on all levels, maybe on government across all the countries and communities and things. But it's not necessarily the case. And the story that jumped out was when you went to was it your kids' school and you asked them, and only about half of them had seen a giraffe in real life. I guess that's a shocking picture for people, or a shocking image for me, because I would have just assumed perhaps everybody would be more aware. Have you found on the community level getting support that has been easier or more difficult because there is this lack of awareness? I don't know. What's the situation on the community level with you now?
I mean, again, it differs a lot. I mean, the good thing about giraffe is that they're not very controversial. They are not threatening normally. It's not like lion or an elephant who actually are life-threatening to a lot of people. Most communities are quite happy to share their living space with giraffe, and they're quite happy to see them. But you also have to understand that obviously a lot of people in Africa have never seen any wildlife because either they live in a city or in many African countries, wildlife is really just limited to national parks, which then a lot of people will just never visit. So for us, when we had this moment at our kids' school, it was really our kids go to a private school in Windhoek. There is giraffe living just 10, 15 kilometers from the school, actually outside the capital. Windhoek is quite small. And we were really shocked because we spent a lot of time on the weekends going out and because we love nature, but we just realized a lot of people don't, even if they could. And then we thought further and thought, what about the parents or the kids whose parents can't? They will have never seen anything. So this is when we started an environmental education program here in Windhoek, which is now we don't really do things in half measure, it turns out. It became the largest environmental education program by numbers in Namibia. So in a non-COVID year, our team takes about 2,500 kids out to a national park for a school day in the field and just shows them animals if they see them, but it's a national park, so they don't always see animals, but they see tracks and they talk about nature and their environment. And the real aim we have is not to only show them giraffe, but to show them how beautiful their country is and that it's really important to protect it. Water is obviously a big issue in a dry country like here, waste. And we talk about all these topics and how everything is interlinked, pyramid of life, and just really try to bring topics that kids normally learn in the school environment, but to link it back to nature and show them. And yeah, it's really successful and positive. Most kids just love it because a lot of them have never been really out of town, have never seen wildlife before. And we just try to instill this passion and that there is something more than just living in town.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess, and it's about forming this connection with things that even though they're right there, people don't necessarily see. I think I similarly spoke to someone from the Marine Conservation Society a few weeks ago, and they were talking about how just go down to the beach and see what's there, and the number of people who live in Scotland who maybe go and have a walk and just have a look at the seaside, but if actually stop and look and appreciate the nature that's there and around you, it has a huge impact. And I think it also helps them not just want to protect the wildlife, but it makes them feel, I think it can really boost somebody and make them feel inspired in other ways as well. So it's really good to hear about. I guess, is it something that you just run in Namibia, or is that kind of something you want to expand further, or how is that based now?
I mean, we work with local communities in most countries to some extent, because as we said before, giraffe can only be saved by the people. But it's on different levels. So we have our environmental education program dedicated here, but in Uganda, for example, we work with another program called Snares to Wares, who do a lot of community outreach and work with communities who live adjacent to Murchison Falls National Park. So there we interact through them, but they also go to schools and interact with kids. We had developed a workbook for our environmental education program here that we now made a bit more general, that it can be used anywhere in Africa. In Kenya, we work with local community groups. There's local rangers that are employed to monitor the giraffe in northern Kenya. They do a lot of work with schools in the area where they're located. So yeah, it's always part of our work, but we are not intending to roll out like a massive environmental education program continent-wide. That's not our expertise and not our passion in the end. It's an important part of what we do, but our focus otherwise is more on giraffe conservation.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, the good thing is, though, I think when I went onto your website, there are so many resources there that if people are interested, and I'll put links to them in the description of the episode, because there were booklets and booklets of things that I was kind of reading through and having a look through, and there's so much there that if you're looking for some reading, there is things you can get really deep into. If you're looking for some lighter kind of fun fact type things, it was quite good. I was in visiting friends in London this weekend. We're allowed to travel again here within safe means, and we went to London Zoo because I can't go anywhere without dragging my friends to an animal attraction, obviously. And so I was able to stand there in preparation for this interview and say, "Oh, would you like to know some things about giraffes that I learned?"
So did they leave you there?
It was yes, I love it. It was, I think, I can't tell whether they love going with me or hate going with me, because the fun facts, I think, at the start of the day are fun facts, but by the end of the day, when we're looking at things that are like giraffe, like we can't keep going back. We've seen the giraffes for an hour already this morning. We can't go back. We have other things to see. It becomes a bit stretching, but I won't apologize for it. So yes, but yeah, so yes, we've talked about kind of the challenging things and the education things and what inspiring other people. But I wanted to kind of to bring us back on track instead of me trying not apologizing to my friends. What inspired you? There must be fantastically personally rewarding moments as well. And I wanted to ask what the best thing for you about doing this is on kind of a personal level. What is your favorite part about this?
I mean, we've been very lucky over the years to support many African and international students. And I think to see people grow, build capacity, I think that's amazing to see. You know, we've just had the other day that our East African coordinator, now Dr. Arthur Meneza, and the support we've had from donors and others to help him be able to do his work, which is essentially helping the Kenyan government implement and better understand giraffe conservation and its strategy in the country. So everything that we do around capacity building is linked to the programs on the ground. You know, we don't study how many ticks there are on the ear of a Nubian giraffe during May. It all has to have a very conservation focus. And I think the students that come through, you know, some of them are still with GCF, where we're very lucky. Others have moved on, and I think that's what it's about. It's building this new cadre of conservationists around the world, and hopefully the links that come with it will not just help giraffe, but save many animals' habitat across the globe.
Would you say the same, Steph, or is it other things for you?
You can't say the same because I said that.
Normally I say this, so I have to come up with something else now. No, I mean, I think it is a lot about people. We have been really lucky to meet some amazing people, and that is really rewarding. But on another level, you mentioned zoos before, and you obviously love zoos, and you go there and you get quite close to giraffe, which we normally don't. For us, giraffe are 4 species. Populations. We see giraffe a lot in the wild, but we see them at a distance. So for us, actually going to zoos is fantastic, or during a translocation when you have the opportunity to get really close to a giraffe. That is really something I still find absolutely amazing, when you put your hand in front of the nostrils of a giraffe and you feel it breathe. That is just really so unreal, and I can't say enough how amazing that is, because they're such amazing animals. And I still, after all these years, every time I see a giraffe in the wild, it puts a smile on my face. They're just amazing animals, and seeing them run free into a new environment after a translocation is when you know this is years of hard work and stress, and I mean, you're always quite tense and you hope everything goes well. And then when they start running out free, it's hard to describe.
I can't even begin to, because I was lucky enough once to go on safari in South Africa, and seeing a giraffe at that distance of things was amazing for me, who has not worked and put all this extra effort in, and I was just kind of sat there appreciating from a distance without the knowing all of the backstory that would have gone, like, the work that you would have put in must add such another level to it. And yes, it must just be the best feeling in the world, and one that I yes, probably it isn't old now, and I can't imagine it ever will become any less amazing. But that's really really interesting.
Yeah, and although maybe also just to add to that, some days we sit back, and now just talking to you makes you realize actually we're making a difference.
Mhm.
Normally in your day-to-day work, you don't think about it, and you get caught up on little things and annoying that you get some narky emails or that something doesn't work, or just, I mean, in the end, our day-to-day life can be quite frustrating, obviously, as any job. It can be super rewarding as well, but it's very rarely that we sit back and think about it in terms of thinking, actually, we are making a difference. And that is, it's
Mhm.
quite.
Yes. I'm glad I've helped facilitate that moment today. It's been the reflection of moment, because I think that's a lot of people. I don't know whether it's just when they sit down, when I send a list of questions to people, they sit down and think, oh, because it seems to happen at this point about every interview I do. People go, hang on, are we too quiet? Like, it's been a stressful year with COVID and everything, but when you sit back and look on the whole picture and with everything that's going on, the work has still happened at the end of the. It's maybe been not the way it has been imagined, but a lot of people have still been able to achieve huge, amazing, incredible things. And you've managed to reach Scotland, which is a long way away. So yes, there's one person you've got. And now hopefully people will listen to this, and yes, I will send it to everybody I know to kind of yes.
Well, what's really bizarre with Scotland that they actually have a giraffe that was brought in there called Fennessy, that was named after us, that came from Midlands in the UK. Yeah, Fennessy's been brought to Scotland. He's in Edinburgh, so we're going to have to come up and say g'day one day.
Yes, good. That's quite an honour, I think. Yeah, big one. I suppose it's easier to go with surname, because if they picked one or the other of you, then there would have been an issue. But they've gone with surname to make it.
That would have been.
Messi is named after him.
Oh, well, that's kind of bringing us towards the end of the interview and the things that I kind of wanted to ask. I wondered, just to kind of wrap up, I guess I was going to ask, looking forward, what are the kind of things that you were most kind of looking forward to doing, or kind of, but there seems to be quite a lot that needs done. So it might be quite a scary question, but what are the things you're most kind of looking forward to doing in the future? What are the big things that you're looking forward to doing?
I suppose, how long do you have? You know,
Maybe one or two highlights, one or two, not like a.
No, so I mean, there's some exciting things like, you know, the Mozambique program that Steph said, you know, rewilding giraffe back into a country. Firstly, with, you know, developing a national strategy, building capacity of the veterinarians in the country is one of the things that we're also doing. Sourcing, you know, founder giraffe populations in South Africa, but doing the genetic work first to make sure we're reintroducing the correct giraffe. And, you know, we're talking about, you know, another more than 100 million acres of giraffe potential habitat in Mozambique. And this is really going to, you know, what's going to be the game changer for giraffe is these big landscapes going in and making a big difference, while at the same time continuing doing what we're doing. Because if you don't, you know, do the day-to-day job, you know, all these exciting things don't come up, and, you know, you can forget about it, and soon giraffe, like many animals, go before your eyes.
Yeah, but on a bit shorter scale now, it's June, which is a big month for us. The 21st of June is World Giraffe Day, the longest day or the longest night here in Africa for us, for the tallest animal. So we hope that we can get a lot of attention to giraffe and raise awareness, and maybe also a little bit of funding to continue with our work.
Yes. I think that's the good thing, and I'll make sure to put the links, because this episode will be launching. I was looking forward in the month, and I had planned episodes up to World Giraffe Day, and then your email came in, and I was perfect. I'll slot right in on World Giraffe Day.
Yes.
Which, yes. So anybody who's listening on World Giraffe Day, happy World Giraffe Day. And I'll put the links down in the description so that people can go if they are feeling inspired after listening to you to go and do that. Is there anything else you would recommend they go and look at, or is there anything else that they would recommend that they do, or any sign-off message for the listeners that you would want them to take away?
Yeah, we always say, I mean, as you rightly pointed out, most people don't know that giraffe are in trouble. So help us share the information, talk to your friends and family, and tell them that giraffe actually do need your help. On our website, you can also adopt a giraffe. It's a symbolic adoption. So it's giraffe that live wild and free in northwestern Namibia, but our team monitors them regularly and writes little updates. So it's quite a nice little program for people to engage a little bit more. So go to our website, adopt a giraffe, or just
share on social media, lots of things. And of course, you can always donate, as we always say. Giraffe can only be saved in Africa by Africans, and that's our job here, is to do that. So, we'd love everyone to stand tall, stick their neck out for giraffe on World Giraffe Day. But, together, I think we can make much more of a difference. And so we really appreciate Jack for being able to do the podcast and hopefully share with your audience. So thanks a million.
Thank you very much. That wraps everything up very nicely. So we will leave it there, and thank you so much for your time today. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
And welcome back. I really hope you enjoyed that interview with Julian and Steph there. It was so interesting, not just to hear from one, but from both of them, and to gain a little bit extra perspective on that documentary that I mentioned before, which of course I will put the link for in the description of this episode if you want to learn more about the Giraffe Conservation Foundation and giraffe in general, and about the important work that's going on surrounding them. I can't thank them enough for their time. It was really amazing to sit down with them virtually and talk to them. Them based in Namibia, of course, me up in Scotland. You'd think these opportunities wouldn't come by very often, but they took the time to kind of sit down, even though they're halfway across the world from me, and make the time to talk about the giraffes and the foundation. So I can't thank them enough. I also want to thank, of course, all of you for listening. If you do want any more information, I'll put the links to everything we discussed in the description. As I've said, there is loads of information on the Giraffe Conservation Foundation's website, so make sure and go and check it out because it really is full of fantastic resources. And yeah, you can really educate yourself on the threats that giraffes face out in the wild, and also you can then educate those around you. You can tell them about next time you go and see giraffes, or you see them on a documentary or whatever, wherever you are exposed to them, you can point out to people, actually, you may love them, but they're actually in a lot of danger, so we really need to help them. And you can, using some of the tips and things that Julian and Steph gave us throughout the episode, you can try and make the world a lot safer for them. I also want to thank you because this is actually the penultimate episode of this series. I'm very sorry. We have we have one episode left. It's been a fantastic series, and I'll talk more and thank everybody properly next week. But it has been a fantastic series to see the numbers grow and to hear all these stories and to share these stories with you. It's been absolutely amazing. So thank you very much. Make sure to follow us because we will be back for a season 3. We're just taking a tiny short break. Just so I can catch up on sleep. And I want to keep the episode quality as high as I can, so I would rather take a little break, build up my energy again, and then jump back in. But yes, season 3 will be coming very soon. for now, of course, follow us on social media and follow us on your podcast streaming service of choice at Pangolin Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, all the podcasting apps. Make sure you click that subscribe or follow button, and make sure that you don't miss out on any of our content going forward. Yes, but for now, happy World Giraffe Day. Thank you very much for listening. And yeah, talk to you again very, very soon. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.